I'm Julia, and I will be talking about British history from the Roman Empire and a little bit before that up to the Norman invasion. I took AP European History 2 years ago, but that curriculum only started during the Middle Ages around 1400s, so a lot of this information is new to me. From the British Tradition Literature textbook by Prentice Hall, British history can be traced to the conquest of Britain by two groups of Celts. One, called the Britons, settled on the largest island, now known as Britain. The other, the Gauls, settled on the second largest island, now known as Ireland. Farmers and hunters, they lived in clans, and their priests were called Druids. In 55 AD, these people were conquered by Rome. A Roman emperor called Hadrian, pictured here, built a wall across the width of England, across all 73 miles, to defend against northern attackers. On this map of England, Hadrian's Wall is located right here. According to BBC History Online, it was built from 112 AD to 130 AD. There's also a wall above Hadrian's Wall called Antony's Wall. This wall was also constructed for defense, but it was evacuated as the Romans retreated into defense only 21 years after the start of its construction, according to the BBC British History Timeline. An artifact made during this time period was the Staffordshire Moorlands pan. According to the British Museum, archaeologists and historians believe that this pan was made as a souvenir of the Hadrian Wall for a soldier. It was made in the Celtic style with turquoise, blue, red, and yellow-colored enamel. The inscription on the side of the pan are the names of different forts along Hadrian's Wall. This age of relative unity ended with the fall of the Western Roman Empire. As the Roman Empire fell, Anglo-Saxons began to move into England. However, the Christianity that the Romans first brought to England did not die. In 597, Augustine arrives in Kent and begins to convert more people to Christianity. He came over to England because the King of Kent, called Ethelbert, commissioned him after being married to a Christian wife. Ethelbert then became the first Anglo-Saxon king to reject paganism and embrace Christianity. In 627, the Church of York, now called the York Minster, began construction. According to Rick Steves' Europe, the finished church has more original medieval glass than all the churches in England combined. This is an example of the glass that is in this church. It's very beautiful and detailed. Some details that are too high up for observers to see are said to be only meant for the eyes of God. The conversion of England to Christianity continues, and Christianity spreads. During Anglo-Saxon rule, the Vikings were a force to be reckoned with. Around AD 789 were the first recorded Viking attacks in Dorset. According to Dr. Anna Ritchie, writing for BBC History, the first Viking raids were hit and run, with no coordination, no long-term plan behind them. An important point to note is that these raids were common in this era, and the Vikings would not have their infamous reputation today had they not begun attacking churches. Once they attacked churches, many more important people began speaking out against them. One such person was Alcuin of York, who moved east to become an advisor to Charles the Great, or Charlemagne. In his letters to Ethelred, the king of Northumbria, he says, "Behold the church of St. Cuthberg, spattered with the blood of the priests of God, despoiled of all its ornaments, a place more venerable than all in Britain is given as a prey to pagan peoples." Interestingly, he believed the destruction was divine retribution for the failing moral standards of the people of Northumbria. The Vikings soon became more organized and developed an army for conquest, instead of just hit-and-run raids. An example of this shift took place in 867 in Northumbria. According to Richard Hall, writing for the Jorvik Viking Center, a common legend says that the Vikings attacked Northumbria in retribution for the execution of a great Viking leader. It was a good time to attack, since in Northumbria there were two rival kings at war with one another. The Viking army took advantage of the unrest and killed both kings and captured York. They renamed York to Jorvik, and used it as a base for further invasions. And they were quite successful. Just 2 years later, Edmund, the king of East Angles, was slaughtered. A year after that, Dumbarton, known as a fortress of the Britons, fell to the invaders. Things just got worse. In 874, the Vikings conquered the kingdom of Mercia. 877, Welsh king Rodimar is defeated. And in 878, Wessex is overrun. Finally, in 886, Alfred, king of Wessex, signed a treaty with Vikings to divide England. This brought a period of relative peace, but then fighting began again. This time the English won a decisive victory in 937, when Athelstan of Wessex destroyed the Viking armies at Brunanburh, Ethelstan was also the first king of all England. I know I'm running low on time, but let me just finish this. Here's a coin from the British Museum. It was minted under Anlaf Guthfrithson, who ruled York and also parts of the East Midlands. And on it you can see a bird that is either an eagle or a raven. And interestingly enough, this symbol was associated with both the Norse god Odin and St. John. So the religious message of this coin is debatable, and it also shows the different cultural influences at that time. Anglo-Saxon rule came to an end in 1066 when the Normans invaded England. I've taken French throughout high school, and this part of history is always in the textbook somewhere, so I know a little about this already. From BBC History, Edward the Confessor had no heir, and he was unclear about who his heir was. He had supposedly willed the kingdom to William of Normandy, who wasn't even English, but Edward also seemed to like Harold Godwinson. Harold, of course, was crowned king immediately after Edward died, but he failed to defend his crown when William led an invading army from France. Harold was defeated by the Normans at the Battle of Hastings on October 14, 1066, as shown in the Bayeux Tapestries here. This is only a part of the Bayeux Tapestries, which is 70 meters long in total according to the Site officiel de la Tapisserie de Bayeux. 1066 marked the end of an era and the beginning of a new one. Thank you for listening.